leading laps at the 2026 Indy 500, and placing ahead of names like Scott Dixon, Joseph Newgarden, and Helio Castroneves, all being done in a part-time team. That's what happened a few weeks ago from the perspective of Conor Daly, who despite continually showing he's a prominent driver, just can't seem to catch a break. Conor Daly has been racing in IndyCar since 2013, and did it purely off of his raw talent, and being an Indiana native, he's one of the fan favorites in the paddock. But somehow, he's just never found himself in a competitive IndyCar seat for more than a season or two at a time, and currently, he's out of a full-time ride altogether. Everyone knows his name, everyone seems to like him, and he does perform, but he just kinda gets the rug pulled from underneath him. How is it that one of the most recognizable and capable drivers in the IndyCar sphere keeps ending up on the outside looking in? Conor Daly was born in Noblesville, Indiana in 1991, around 30 miles from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and had a history of speed in the family. His father, Derek Daly, was a former F1 and Champ Car driver, and his stepfather, Doug Bowles, was and still is the president of IndyCar and IMS. Deep roots within the sport meant Conor Daly was no stranger to racing, as he started at a young age to fulfill his dreams of racing at IMS. He started karting at age 10, and won the World Karting Association Grand Nationals in 2006, and then graduated into real car racing. In 2008, his first full-time year in race cars, he won the Skip Barber National Championship with 5 wins in 14 races, and showed that despite his family lineage, he had all the skills to back up his name. From there, he progressed to the Star Mazda Championship, where he resided for 2 years. The first concluded with a third in the championship, including a win in New Jersey, and the following year, where he won it all, after finishing top 4 in all 12 races, while racing for a familiar team, Juncos Hollinger Racing. That season, he set records as he achieved 9 poles and 7 wins on the way to his title. After making a splash in the Mazda Star Series, he took part in Indy Lights and GP3, and found success in both, but in 2012 and 2013, Daly focused on GP3 only, and found a race win in Barcelona and Valencia. That transitioned into a season in GP2 in 2014 as well, and in all these series, Daly didn't top the sheets or shock the world in any way, but he gained a lot of experience, and showed he was a professional level driver, and he deserved a full-time shot somewhere. As a matter of fact, he actually ended up having a test with Force India in 2012, adding even more to his resume. My point here is that Conor Daly leading up to IndyCar was not a guy who limped his way in, or made it all through funding. He genuinely earned his way through results, and that is shown in the modern day. For example, prior to this year, Conor Daly had finished the last 4 Indy 500s he raced in the top 10, and he achieved a 12th this year, and that's no pushover, as they occurred across 3 different teams, but it's more impressive when you go into detail rather than just looking at the numbers. In the 2025 Indy 500, Daly may have finished 8th, but for a large portion of the race, he was in the winning position, and the thing that took him out of that was not his fault. On lap 109 of the race, Conor Daly moved past the eventual first and second place finishers, Alex Palou and David Malukas, to become the leading car on the primary strategy that went on to win, and he actually led 13 laps. But playing into Daly's unlucky nature, he started to suffer some pretty bad handling problems from a vibration, and he lost a good amount of positions because of it. Now, I'm not saying this to say that Conor Daly absolutely deserved to win the 2025 Indy 500 and he was robbed, but more to show you that the stats alone don't give Daly justice as to how good he's done. When you look at the teams he's been at, and there have been a lot, he does tend to outperform what his resources should allow on ovals. For example, look at his podium with Juncos Hollinger at the first race in Milwaukee in 2024. This was Daly's 3rd race for the team, as he was a mid-season replacement for Agustin Canapino, yet he managed a podium for a team that was significantly struggling. Although this may seem impressive and warranting Daly being hired by other teams, it just doesn't fall that way though, because he just has some bad luck. I already mentioned in the 2025 Indy 500, but he has just had a pattern of issues that don't always fall on his own fault. It all started with his old team at Carpenter Racing in 2023. If you're unfamiliar, Conor Daly was dropped by the team midway through the season for the reason of increasing competitiveness, and bringing in Ryan Hunter-Reay to close out the year. This started the whole chain reaction that I'm going to go over here in a second, but it is worth mentioning that Ryan Hunter-Reay didn't exactly elevate performance from Daly, and neither did Christian Rasmussen the following year, so blame Daly all you want, but it seemed more like a team struggle to me than an actual driver problem. The same follows suit at Hunko's Hollinger Racing, where he raced full-time last year. Despite being the top performer for the team in the back half of 2024, he almost lost the seat in 2025, as JHR is a team that's in need of funding over results, and his sponsor, Polkadot, rejected a $3.5 million sponsorship deal and almost lost in the seat at the start of the year. He did end up pulling through funding though with the help of 76 gas stations. Anyways, back to the team chain reaction, that's where a majority of Conor Daly's misfortunes have come. And it's not all just bad luck, it's honestly a bit structural too. Let's take a look through his team history. Part-time ride with AJ Foyt in 2013, part-time with both Schmidt-Peterson and Dale Coyne in 2015, full-time ride with Coyne in 16, full-time with Foyt in 17, part-time with both Coyne and Harding in 2018, part-time with Andretti, Carlin, and Aeroschmidt in 2019, then split duties between Carlin and ECR in 2020 and 2021, then finally a full-time ride for ECR in 2022 and half of 2023. And since being dropped, he's raced for Meyershank Racing, Rahal Letterman Lanigan, Dreyer and Rainbow, Dale Coyne, and Hunko's Hollinger, with only one of those teams being a full-time job. The lack of any sort of stable position here is honestly just stressful just to look at, and it's not like he was constantly moving around because of a lack of results, because he never really just had the time to deliver on an insane level, and he was doing well given what he had. When you zoom out, it was a driver who consistently outperformed his machinery at the 500, but never got to show what he can do in a team. Now I know this is very obvious to say because that's the case with most IndyCar drivers. They usually don't get to be in a top team, but despite 13 years in the series, Conor Daly is yet to drive 2 full seasons in a row for the same team. Without any sort of proper stability, it's hard to ever be in a position to wow people consistently, but he has had his fair share of moments that do wow. I will say one thing, in that Conor Daly is by no means a perfect driver, and his strong points come on ovals, and the road course and street courses don't exactly get to the same level, but that shouldn't deter everything. A main reason for lack of funding is that a sponsor wants a driver who will perform everywhere, and unfortunately for him, ovals are now a minority on the IndyCar calendar. But my point is, I'm not here to say he's the most deserving driver based on talent alone, but more to highlight misfortunes that have held him back. Conor Daly was pretty quiet about what happened with the ECR deal, as he said he was legally not allowed to say much, but his bounce backs were pretty decent. Daly was the option for most teams in recent years as a fill-in driver because he has a lot of experience and therefore is a safe option. This was the case with Meyershank Racing, replacing an injured Simon Pagenaud, RLL after they parted ways with Jack Harvey, Dale Coyne when Jack Harvey got injured, and JHR for an outgoing Canapino. The last of those did end up with a full-time ride as a consolation, and that does mark the latest chapter of Conor Daly's IndyCar career, at least in a full-time sense. This past month, he was racing in the Indy 500 with Dreyer Raybolt and led 4 laps before finishing 12th. He was one of the strongest drivers in qualifying too, finishing 8th, but he genuinely was in the pole position conversation, and he was the strongest one-off driver. Realistically, even if a full-time ride isn't on the table next year, I'd at least like to see him as a one-off entry for one of the biggest teams in the paddock for the 500 only. My point here is the resilience is just unmatched, and despite being kicked to the curb at any minor inconvenience, most drivers would have moved on, but Conor Daly hasn't. This is a guy who was born minutes away from the stage that he now competes on, the race that his stepfather runs, and the race that he's finished in the top 10 of 5 separate times. At what point along the story does talent without opportunity become the defining theme of a career? And will Conor Daly ever get the shot his results say he deserves? At the end of the day, Daly has seen massive misfortune, and I can tell you for one, I'm hoping he can turn that around. But what do you think?